How are you? Good. You go grab that. No, we good.
I like to consider the flag of the United States of America. Into the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alderman Alder,
Here.
Alderman Campbell,
Here.
Alderman Galloway,
Here.
Alderman Gardner,
Here.
Alderman Snyder,
Here.
Alderman Vaughn.
Here.
We have 6 aldermen present. We have quorum.
Right, has everybody had an opportunity to look over the meeting minutes from March 20th, regular meeting, and March 23rd, non-legislative session? So I will entertain a motion.
All right, I move that we accept both sets of minutes as written.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Gardner, seconded by Alderman Alder to approve the meeting minutes of March 20th, regular meeting, and March 23rd, non-legislative session. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, moving on to scheduled visitors and guests. We have Scott Turner coming to talk about the Northtown Park flooding issues. If you give the clerk your, does he go ahead and need to go ahead and give you his name and address? Okay.
John Turner, JONUR 1595 East Lake Crest Drive.
Thank you.
Good to see you all again. I think last time I saw you was the pandemic times. We were all virtual back then. And I live on Lake Crest Drive, which is just south of the new Northtown Park subdivision that you all had approved back in March of 2021. And Alderman Alder, I'll tell you, you're on the hook because you voted with us with your concerns about the rainwater abatement issues and of course the transportation issues that are coming with the Northtown Park. But I know Mayor Flores and Alderman Galloway, you were there at that meeting and you voted in favor. And I'm here first of all just by the golden rule to say that I hope that those of us that are neighbors of Ozark would treat you as neighbors in the same manner that you would treat us as good neighbors. At that time, we were greatly concerned about the water flow by the new Northtown Park subdivision. We knew that the city knew that, and in fact, your city people had told us that there had been a problem with the water coming out of Grand Haven since shortly after it was constructed, farther up the hill. And that water from Grand Haven subdivision then poured out onto a large piece of land that's now been developed or is being developed for the Northtown Park subdivision. And we knew that that water, a lot of that coming across that property, was helping slow the flow of water onto Lake Crest Drive and those of us that live south of that property. And we knew that that piece of land was protecting us for all those years. Our home has been there since 1993. And we knew that that piece of land flooded terribly, had lots of problems. And in fact, again, the city folks always mentioned to us that they knew that there was a water issue coming out of Grand Haven. And that we were told that we now hold the developers to a higher standard, especially on water abatement, and that this would not happen with the development of Northtown Park. We disagreed with that. We had engineers spoke to you at that time about that. And of course, we have also concerns about traffic coming on later on, but I specifically focus on water. I don't know what was included in the material that I gave the clerk to come to present to you today. But of course, they're now developing Northtown Park for sale property up there. And the last page I gave you shows you the first instance of this great water abatement resolution plan that has been developed by the developer. And you can see on the first significant rain that we had after the completion of that project. If you see the picture, there's a concrete culvert that was supposed to help us solve that water abatement problem we've been promised from the start. Whenever you finally went ahead and approved it. And you can see that after this first rain, the dirt on the side of that drainage control came apart. It basically, the dam burst, okay? And that all came on my property. My home has been there since 1993. It's never had water in the basement. I had water in the basement, first time ever, okay? My home has been there since 1993. I've never had water on the septic field. My septic field was completely underwater from this. That was a short period of time, but not only were we told when you finally approved, and Councilman Alder, you're with us, I appreciate you on that. But when the council finally approved that the promises were made that not only with this new plan, the development of Northtown Park would not only remediate the problem we know we've had from Grand Haven, that by developing that property, it would channel more water out to Pheasant Drive, so less would come across our property. And then the solution would be this concrete culvert that would slow the progression of water. And after the first rain, again, you can see on that picture that the dirt all over the way. Now, since that time, they've come back and pushed that dirt back up to make the dam again, and they've planted grass, and maybe it gets stronger grass. But we all know that this rain we had a couple of weeks ago was not as big as we've had in the past. In fact, I've checked with the National Weather Service. We had 20 events in the last 10 years that have had more rain in a 24-hour period than we had in that rain a couple of weeks ago. So we know this is something that happens quite regularly. We know the engineers do that. And again, they did come back, fix it, push the dirt back up, plant grass again. But again, the point with me, that's the first time I've ever had water in my basement since 1993. It's the first time my septic field has been completely underwater. It's been partially underwater before, but this time it's completely underwater. I know it's from maximum flow. And I guess the last concern that I have is that, and by the way, the special road district has been out. No, but people who lived on that road for years has never remembered that Lake Crest Drive was impassable. It was impassable from about 5 a.m. until about 7, maybe 6:30 in there. Lake Crest Drive was impassable. The water was so deep along through there. Okay, so we know that, as we told you at the original meeting, that water's coming from Grand Haven. It's no longer going to be stopped by that piece of land. It's now being developed by Northtown Park. They put all these great culverts in. It's going to expedite that across their property, on our property. And the last defense that we have failed the pipe bore engineer. Okay, so again, I take no pleasure in saying we told you so, but we told you so. And we were promised that engineering now is better than it was when Grand Haven resolved. And by the way, I've got other pictures to show you. At the first time I was able to get through the road, first place I went was up to the Grand Haven subdivision. Some of you know that drainage area at Grand Haven, there's a sign up in the middle of it. This is basically don't swim in it. And it's basically a real estate sign, it's maybe that tall. Our road just became passable again. And at Grand Haven, the water was still low in that retention basin. You can see the bottom of that sign. So again, there's only about this much water being retained in that retention basin of Grand Haven. And we had been promised, when you guys voted to do that subdivision, you promised, John, we do this much better now. We hold them to a higher standard. We're going to resolve that Grand Haven issue. We're going to deal with that water coming across at a much faster rate into your property. And again, for the first time I had water in my basement. So be a good neighbor and get this done right. Don't just come back and push the dirt back up and reseed it. This is not done the way it's supposed to be done. And we've been paying for that on Grand Haven for years, or on Lake Crest Drive, from the water from Grand Haven. This was supposed to be the solution. And again, you made a promise to us and you did not hold up your end of the deal. So be a good neighbor and make this right. And we would hope that you would, again, make sure that the developer, who by the way has not contacted the neighbors. I did see the city people that came out, people from Special Road District, they came out, they all have all the pictures, but we've yet to hear any resolution other than the backhoes come in, stacking the dirt back up and replanting things. So again, you promised us back in March 2021 that this would be better. There's going to be a solution to our problems. We voted for this, and we hope that you'll stick to your promises.
Thank you. Mr. Childers, I know that we have our engineer looking into this, don't we?
Yeah, there was a significant rain event. As you know, we had wind, we had rain, we had significant damage all over the community in Ozark. Yes, our engineers are looking into this. We've met with the developer, we've met with their engineers. We are doing all the research to determine what's going on out there. We will look back at the historical rain events and make sure also that we know how this rain event may have been different from other rain events in the past. So yeah, we're in the process of doing our study. I do want our study specific to this rain event and the occurrence that the gentleman was talking about. I also want to mention that you may remember that we're also in a much bigger we're in a much bigger drainage basin study that we started several months ago, where we're also doing dye testing and tracing to determine exactly where all the water is flowing. This is a very, very large drainage basin. It goes much further north than Grand Haven. We talk about Grand Haven a lot because it's a development that exists in the city of Ozark. But the drainage basin and all the water that flows to this spot comes from a much, much larger area. And we're also doing a study on that. We're not completed with that study yet. So hopefully maybe that will also allow us to have some data that we can bring forward and we can look at that as well.
Gotcha. Do we have the plat for Northtown Park?
I believe that it is loaded on the computer.
So what she's opening is the golf phases and then phase one final plat, which is what's been completed as far as the.
Mr. Smith, if you would help us out here. The actual development there for Northtown Park is the detention basins that we're talking about. Does that have to pertain to the development that he's doing up there? Or are there additional retention basins for the other development? So this be Mr. Parsons.
Leave the pointer over there. You mind repeating that question?
I know he put the two retention basins in on the road that he added for that exit there. But I think those were kind of an afterthought since he was running through that way. But are these serving for his main development that's the original plan?
So the two detention ponds that you see on your screen, I'll try to point down there. Well, my pointer's not working. You can see kind of the wider looking lots that look like they're running east-west because that's what they do along the main drive headed into the development of the first phase. Those are a system of two detention ponds that, if we were to scroll to the north, Grand Haven would be up to the north and to the east a little bit. Those detention ponds are designed to capture all the water that this project creates, detain those in that system of two ponds, and then release those at a slower release rate down to what is the south and west.
All right. And do we have any idea about when the engineers will know what's happening there?
Yeah, this event obviously occurred on 3/24. I'm not gonna mince any words. This was pretty heartbreaking because we do design things to withstand these events. It was a catastrophic event, but again, it seems like those are happening more and more often. But what I would respectfully ask is that you let us get in and really make a data-driven response to this. Right now, we're actually shooting elevations upstream and downstream to figure out why this didn't hold according to plan. So again, I respectfully ask, we've got engineers, developers, staff, multiple staff members looking into this. I will say that everybody's been great to meet with immediately. Obviously, again, that was a rough morning, Friday the 24th. But we circled the wagons quickly, and we hope to have a full report once we get all the data.
And with that report, I guess it will tell us not just what happened, but how to remedy that in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Not sure who was first here. That's all.
So what about the detention pond in Grand Haven? He was supposed to do something to fix that. It wasn't the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah, we did require that we look at the upstream conditions in Grand Haven. And we did redesign the pier in Grand Haven to accommodate right at 2 feet of additional water to hold back. We redesigned the concrete weir. If you can kind of imagine, initially at Grand Haven, it was basically what amounts to a concrete channel that was coming out of that detention basin. We then built a weir in place to hold that water back and release it at a certain rate. The steel plate in that weir has multiple 2-inch holes go through it. It's a water quality plate. It's designed to release water at a controlled rate So that you're just not, Grand Haven was basically acting like a pass through. That's water would come in, come out. So we did make upstream improvements. And again, I respectfully ask that we just really got a large area, and we are in the middle of a study right now. And I know there's a lot of data to capture out there. None of us want this to happen again.
Mr. Snyder.
Mr. Turner indicated that there was failure in the berm. Have you guys taken a look to see what caused that particular failure? Because generally, when you build a berm, we did it for years when Uncle Sam's military. We compacted that in, but is it just because the water has washed through on either side of your retention concrete?
Yeah, we're looking at that right now. What initial thoughts are, and this is from the developer's engineer as well as consulting with our engineer and staff. We felt like what had occurred with that large amount of water spilling through the weir, which it's designed to do. It's designed to hold that back and release it at a controlled rate. There's some theory that there may have been some spinning involved with that, and basically you had some erosion that was occurring. You're basically creating an eddy there. That what you've seen this before, where it just kind of undermines that berm and eventually allows that to break loose with all that hydraulic pressure. in that berm.
Gotcha. And that would be my question, because anytime there's a void or a cavity in that berm, it just takes that little bit of mountain. So I just want to make sure that we did our due diligence in making sure that was put in there correctly.
And we did follow the inspection process. We did follow the plans, and I understand Mr. Turner's frustration. We're frustrated as well, but I say we did the due diligence. Alderman Snyder, we're still doing the due diligence.
Mr. Garland.
Timeline. Oh, sorry.
No, he called my name, but I don't think I'm next. I think Bruce is before me.
I'll ask
Yeah.
another question. I have two, but the first one is, what would be the timeline for citizens of the board to expect when the studies are done sufficient, where we have data to understand what happened?
Yeah, so what we hope to do is continue and produce a full report with conclusions and remedies and action steps, things that we recommend. Again, once we get all that data, we had talked among staff about getting together at a breakfast meeting where we have more time to kind of speak with one another and show you the results of that plan. I think that'd be a great venue to do that at. I don't know if Mr. Childers, if we've got a spot on the next agenda, we could try to have. My fear is that we're in the midst of this Ozark Underground study, which is the main watershed study for everything. I hate to bring in bits and pieces of data without giving you the whole picture. And of course, I understand the urgency as well. I mean, this is something that needs to be done. I don't know if we'll be ready by the next breakfast meeting, which is
The 19th, I think. But it can either be the 17th or the 19th. The next breakfast meeting, I believe, is maybe the Thursday, whatever the Thursday is. Maybe the 20th, yeah. The 20th, that can be certainly one of the topics. We're obviously going to have more information than we have now, because we're going to continue to be working on this diligently to get that information. So we can certainly bring it to you. We're shooting elevations. We're also looking at the functionality and how the detention basin, which is a very, very large basin that exists in the subdivision that the Alderman that lives in. So we're looking at everything from the top of the drainage basin to the bottom. And you don't just look at it in one direction, you look at it in both directions and you see what's changed in the whole thing. So you know the whole picture. Yeah, you want to be able to see the whole picture so you can figure out what exactly went on and what may have caused one thing to lead to another. So
I guess I'll rephrase my question. I'm not interested in a rushed presentation. my question, I'll make it more specific. There are, as I understand it, two investigations, one that pre-existed this event. And that is, we're doing a water study to see where our waters are coming from. And that is in process, and that's a organization is putting in dyes, and they're trying to see if we have a rainstorm, where it goes. That's one study.
Yes, sir.
When do you expect that study to be done?
The study couldn't really start until we started getting water, which is what moves it through the process. So a lot of it is weather dependent. We're about 65% done on it. I wish I could give you a time, but it is a lot based up on the weather because that's what takes the dye through the process. So rain, lots of rain, maybe faster, but I can't really answer it, but I can tell you we're about 65% done with where we are right now.
Sometime this calendar year.
Yes, sir.
And then, so there's that study that gives us kind of a broader picture, which would help us probably inform us as to other developments and what to do there and what kind of guidelines to have. But then there's another investigation that is just specific to this failure. And what's the timeline for that investigation to complete?
If you would like to take this in that approach where we look at the individual studies, I believe we can have our preliminary finding of facts by the end of this month. If not by the 1 month for the meeting day. What we're having to do on Galloway is that we also had a study in Grandview that we did as part of this, so that we can analyze the upstream. We've got the North Town Park study, and we have just inundated our engineers with a mountain of data to try to go through that and understand what exactly costs them in this case. So I want to bring you the best data possible.
And so with that part of my question over, I mean, it sounds very much like the city administration is in agreement with Mr. Turner that the failure of this berm is not acceptable and a disappointment and a failure of the plan. Does that sound about right?
It does. Each and every one on the staff, because we do not design things, nor do we inspect them in the anticipation of them failing. That is not what we do. We want to build things that actually help downstream conditions. So yes, we're disappointed, but we also have to better understand what caused that failure before we start jumping to conclusions. So
Sure. So it could be there's a design flaw, could be a construction flaw, or there could be some other factors that we're just not aware of. But you think you'll be able to hunt most of that down in about 30 days or so?
yes, sir.
Now, my suggestion is that we not hear a presentation until we made it through that time. Right. I think everybody's nodding their head in agreement. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Gardner.
Yeah, first of all, Mr. Turner, thank you for letting me off the hook, but I was one of the ones that voted to go ahead with this. But I have a concern here, Jeremy. I know there are a lot of moving parts in these various studies, but I think the real bottom line is when we get the results, are we going to be in a position to fix the problem? Period, yes or no?
Absolutely.
Is there any responsibility on the part of the developer, or is this gonna all be at our?
That's what you gotta determine. Is that we can't jump to that conclusion yet, and I think it's important that the end goal is to prevent this from happening again. What needs to happen between now and then is us better understand how.
No, I understand that. Well, this is my last chance to make any kind of comment like that, but we approved it, and I think it's our responsibility to make it right, however that's done. So.
Mr. Ball.
I wasn't here, obviously, when we discussed it before. So my only question would be, obviously, we are in our season where we're going to get a lot of rain. What is being done by either us or the developer to prevent further flooding from happening in the next 30 to 60 to 90 to 180 days whenever we get some kind of answer here?
So just to be clear, this This occurred on common area. So this common area is owned by the HOA. So we've got to be very careful about utilizing our resources on private property. You guys are all familiar with that. What's being done in the interim is that they went in with their own engineer and went back with a fix on that burn, recompacted that, and they also changed the downstream conditions where they thought the water was pushing through and spinning back so that that could channelize and keep moving on downstream. And then what we've been doing in the process all along is shooting elevations of where the failure occurred, how high the water got, where the discharge point was, what's the finished floor elevation of Mr. Turner, so we can put all these pieces together.
So since this event on the 24th, that they at least attempted to repair it and.
Absolutely, and they've met with us right on the spot and have met with us 3 times since.
Yeah, I'm going somewhat off memory here, but you know, it was my understanding at the time, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when the developer put these 2 detention ponds in, I guess you would call them. This was not only built for the size of what he was trying to capture there, but also was oversized to help out with what Grand Haven was releasing that it wasn't supposed to be.
And that's why we did that additional upstream study to account for some of the water that was getting through green.
Yeah, because I know when we were looking at this, that was the intention of it. Do we feel like it would have helped overall if it hadn't have failed, or was the failure ultimately hard to say at the moment?
Hard to say. I
Okay.
really don't want to speculate. Be very careful with what we do.
I understand. I understand. Mr. Campbell.
In the picture we've got here, I'm not sure when this picture was taken, but was the weir plate ever put in? It doesn't look like there's a weir plate in this.
At that time, we did have a weir plate in place because one of the concerns was that with all the straw and the loose vegetation, that we were getting clogged up on the bottom holes.
Okay,
So we had talked about maybe removing that until we get all the vegetation established and there's not as much debris in place.
okay.
I'm really struggling with this picture and seeing what time that picture was taken.
That's not a lot better, but so
Yeah.
the weir plate was not in place when this happened? When the
It was in place. One of our concerns was with the newness of this detention pond. We felt like debris was clogging those designed weir holes to control the release rate.
so
We
when
had
the
that additional pressure.
when the berm was breached, plate in place.
Yes,
So we went in there and took that out.
I think the water is still over the weir plate at this point. I'm looking back at some of our engineers that are working on this, but we have not taken it off. Now, since then, we have cleaned the weir plate, but your water at this point is still over. the weir plate.
Oh, so that's why we're not seeing it.
Yes,
It's
sir.
just, it's over
Yes.
top of it.
Yes.
Okay, okay. And you had touched on something there about being careful about spending our resources on a private developer's project or ever how you put that. I'm not sure. It was something along those lines. The developers, I just want to be clear, or I just want to make sure that I'm clear in my mind. Stormwater calculations are done by the developer's engineers. They're not done by our people, correct?
That is correct. We received those stormwater reports and calculations, and then we reviewed them based upon our codes and our standards.
Okay. And do we have as-built elevations of the detention ponds
Yes, sir.
before we allow them to start using it?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's good enough.
Right before any final plat is approved, one of our requirements is to get as-bills on the entire development. So
Okay.
we've got great data, and that's kind of what we're going through, right?
With that being said, and I don't know what the feeling is of the rest of the board, but with that being said, I don't see the city having a lot of risk here. I think the risk goes back on the developer and or their engineers. Due to the calculation. Now, if it was a installation failure, that obviously that wouldn't go back on the engineers. If they didn't compact the berm correctly when it was put in and stuff like that, but I don't think the city has a lot of risk here. Now, that's just my opinion. You don't have to respond to it. I just throwing it out there. Okay. All right.
Joe,
I just wanted to point out, there's been a lot of good comments, and thank you for what you just said, Mr. Campbell. I think that's a good point, and certainly sympathetic to what's going on here, but we've been using the word failure. And I want to make clear that certainly we can look at a picture and we can determine that there was a berm that was breached and there was a failure in the construction of that berm. But the word failure doesn't indicate that there's a failure on many fronts, or that it was a failure of the entire system to not work the way it should, or and so forth. So I think I just want to point out that as we go through here, we had a rain event. There was a unique flooding occurrence that happened in a residence. We're relating those things, but we're trying to go through the study to determine how, if they are related to one another. I know it may seem obvious, but until we get through the full study, I think that it's important to note that the word failure, we're looking at and applying that to the berm that was there. We don't know where else the design of the entire watershed may have failed. I just wanted to point that out. So going back to, risk and liability and all that stuff, we're trying to figure that out. So.
any further questions or comments from the board? Well, I think we'll look forward to this report, and we would keep you updated as far as how that's going out there. Like Mr. Vaughn said, we are in a wet time of year, so obviously time is of essence on figuring out what's happening there. So, thank you. Okay. Moving on to the next item, we have the first reading of bills and resolutions. Mr. Snyder.
Your Honor, I move that we place bill number 3440 on its first reading by title and description only, please.
Motion was made by Alderman Snyder, seconded by Alderman Vaughn to place bill 3440 on its first reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance authorizing the city to enter into a contract with S&H Farm Supply Incorporated for a tractor.
Sam.
We are looking at purchasing a utility tractor for our parks department. The current tractor that we have right now is a 1997 Kubota tractor, and we purchased this in 2005 for the parks department. We would like to go into a contract with S&H Farm Supply. We went out to bid, we received 3 bids. This is the detail of the tractor that we're looking for. It has some attachments. What I really want to make sure to note is there's a little picture of it in the corner. The biggest thing that's going to help for us is these are automatic attachments. So the staff can go up to it and it's not these big cumbersome trying to get down from the tractor, staff having to put the attachments on. So this will be really, really nice for our staff, and they will much appreciate having these quicker connects for them. Let's see what else. Purchase price, bid came in at $49,000. We then went back to them and said, we would like to trade in our current tractor, and they are offering us $12,000. So the total price that we're looking at is $37,173. I will note that this was a planned purchase, and we have already appropriated funds in the parks new equipment budget.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board on this?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder.
Hey, Matt, just out of curiosity, how many hours did we have on the previous piece of equipment?
I don't know that. I'll have to get that information for you. We've had it since 2005, and the guys, we have an old blue tractor too. If you've seen Phil with this little straw hat on, he rides around, but he rides old blue. So this tractor gets used quite a bit. We have to use a Garrison, we have to use a Riverside, so it runs around quite a bit. I looked into, is this a fair market, like the trade-in value, and I looked it up on I was like, is this NADA, is this Kelly Blue Book, but it is a fair trade for them to ask that for it, especially with, it's starting to show some wear for us. in terms of
Gotcha. So
conditions.
it's safe to say we've got our money's worth out of this tractor. Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. Ball. You said it was a planned purchase. What did you budget for the new one?
I think we put 40.
So where I'm going with that is there any value to keeping and not trading the other one in? Is there enough work for both, or do you need to get rid of it?
I think it's okay.
Okay.
What we do, keep it, so I think it's good. I think we're gonna end up spending more money. We're getting to a place where we're gonna start spending a little bit more money to upkeep what we currently have. And would just like to refurbish it to someone else who wants to do that.
Any other comments from the board? Questions? Hearing none, I'll open it up to public. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of this bill? Anybody here to speak in opposition to it? So please come forward. Hearing none, I'm going to close the public portion of this and no further questions or comments from the board. I will table this and hold it over to the next legislative meeting. Moving on to resolutions. Mr. Gallo.
Your Honor, I move that we read resolution 1980 by title only.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Gardner to read resolution 1980 by title only. All those in favor?
A resolution of the City of Ozark, Missouri, encouraging the elimination of non-native invasive plant species, winter creeper, and encouraging the use of Missouri native plant species.
Okay.
Your Honor, I understood that this was written by an Ozark student, high school student, and I was going to ask to invite her to introduce herself. I think you have to provide us your address and name.
My name is Steven Sherman. I'm gonna see how.
Can I have your address for the clerk, please?
Thank you.
Please.
So I'm actually here today to talk about the invasive plant and the particular first. As I said, I'm a student at Ozark High School. I'm a member of Ozark Undergrad. I'm also an Academy Ambassador for the National Resources and Agriculture Academy at our high school. I plan to have a future in education, and my main goal is to influence change, and I want to start. I want to start. Yeah, absolutely. I'm so sorry. I wanted to discuss one of the invasive species is first before I talk about winter creeper. The definition is an organism that is not indigenous or native to a particular area. Not all species are actually invasive. A lot of the crops that we get, such as wheat, tomatoes, and rice, were from different areas of the country. However, if a plant can adapt to a new environment and it will begin to overpopulate and threaten other species, which is exactly what winter creeper is doing in the city of Ozark. So winter creeper specifically is an evergreen perennial vine. It's a ground cover. As you can see at the far right on my side of the screen, all the leaves on that tree are actually a different plant, which is winter creeper, and it's skipping over that tree. It actually will climb up the trunk of the tree and it will start to suffocate it and stop its growth, and it eventually will kill the trees. It grows in all weather conditions, 4 seasons round, which is why it's really popular in the cities because it looks pretty all year long. But it's actually really, really bad for the environment, and how it spreads is through birds transporting the seeds. They actually don't eat them. They will come up to the seed and try to eat them, but they have no nutrients for them. They're not interested in them, and they'll drop the seed elsewhere, which is how they're taking over different animals. So I want to talk about why a resolution is necessary. It is preventing native species from thriving. And a small photo over there, I don't know if you can see it, but along this, it's on the bluff trail, like the bluff trail spring behind the OC. And the green that you see on the middle of the right there above the soil is actually winter creeper, and it's taking over. And so every time a flood passes through the city, it slowly erodes the soil that's in the area because the roots of the winter creeper are really small and weak, and it cannot hold on to that soil. So every time a flood comes through, it's damaging the areas along the stream. And it's depriving our animals of food sources because it's taking over all of the area in Ozark and along the trails, especially in those areas where we see it the most. And it's not habitable for a lot of the animals because they don't eat the winter creeper. They can't eat it, and because it's invasive and not native to it.
And I have listed 6 alternative plants that will grow all year long as well and look very pretty in yards, which is what a lot of people want. Winter creeper cord, also beautiful on houses. Wild ginger, calamine, robin's plantain, and strawberry, golden ragwort, and Virginia creeper are all just as common and just as necessary as the creeper. And I just don't personally think that it is necessary in the city of Ozark because there are alternatives and these won't get.
I have a question for you. What drew your interest to this particular issue?
As I said, I'm an academy ambassador for Ozark. We just started raising academies where they place you in things that are in your career path, things that you're interested in, and along the year. And so I didn't really start with this project, but my teacher actually was helping me spark ideas. He's here today, and he told me that winter creeper is a really invasive plant species, and I got really interested into it. I would go along the trails, I'd see it everywhere. He showed me photos. We talked about it a lot, and I just wanted to help with the community with my project, and it's something that I was really interested in, and I was really concerned about that.
Well, I was lucky enough to introduce you and this resolution. And then after reading it, I went to my property, or my wife and I's property, and it's everywhere. And I have a tree that fell in the last windstorm that's covered with it. How do you get rid of it?
How do you get rid of it? A lot of, you can pull it actually directly from the root underground, but a lot of people, if you don't want to go that route, you can spray a pesticide on it, wait for it to slowly kind of fall apart, and then you can spray it again, and it will eventually go away. And you can compost the rest. We actually have another student that was working on a composting project, so we can eventually possibly compost it.
Thank you.
Yeah, after we had spoke about this, we started noticing it's actually everywhere. So
Yes.
it's all over the place. Yeah, like, wow, I didn't realize that's what we're looking at. Any other questions from the board? That's all.
Just thank you for bringing that to our attention. I have seen that, excuse me, I have seen this along the highway when you're traveling. And it looks pretty.
It does,
but
yeah, so
It's really, it is really, or anything that it grows on, it grows fast. So
I believe a lot of people in the city are unaware of it because they see it everywhere and it's pretty, but they don't really understand how it's harming our environment around the city and how much damage it's actually causing.
yeah, thank you.
Mr. Ball.
Just, do you know, have any other communities adopted similar resolutions or banned?
Yeah,
What-
so in Fayetteville, I actually was in touch with Lee Olson, who started a project there as well. They banned multiple different invasive plants from actually being grown there as well. When I talked to them.
Well, and every time we've been seeing these floods, we have seen our river change quite a bit over the last few years. As we watch it from a map, we are having a lot of erosion problems, and it makes you question how much of it is directly related to this. So I really appreciate you bringing this to us. Thank you.
Your Honor, I move we adopt resolution 1980.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Vaughn to adopt resolution 1980. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay. Moving on to the next resolution, Mr. Galloway.
Your Honor, I move that we read resolution 1981 by title only. Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Gardner to read resolution 1981 by title only. All those in favor?
A resolution by the Board of Aldermen of the City of Ozark, Missouri, approving one appointment to the Land Clearance for Redevelopment Authority.
Okay. Speak to this.
So this resolution handles appointment of a board member to the Land Clearance Redevelopment Authority. That is the LCRA. That is the entity that is responsible for controlling the property that is by the cemetery and the bluff overlooking the river. There was a vacancy, as I understand it. There's a couple vacancies. Mr. Chuck Branch was a name that came to the attention of the mayor and the city administrator. Mr. Branch has served as chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, if I recall, for several years, is also the former publisher of the Ozark Headliner here, well connected with everything that's been happening in the community for years, not just because of that. But that was a good base to start from and has otherwise been very active and volunteering for different types of city commitments. So it is my honor to propose his appointment by resolution.
Yes, I served on P and Z for many years with Chuck as our chair and have much respect for him. And in any capacity he's willing to serve the community, I find that to be a win for all of us. So. Hearing that, any questions from the board? Not.
Your Honor, I move that we adopt resolution 1981.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Gardner to adopt resolution 1981. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, moving on to the next, Mr. Galloway.
Your Honor, I move that we place resolution 1982. Well, I move that we read resolution 1982 by title only.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Vaughn to read resolution 1982 by title only. All those in favor?
A resolution by the Board of Aldermen of the City of Ozark, Missouri, approving 2 reappointments to the Land Clearance for Redevelopment Authority.
You may speak to this one. This one here, we had multiple people on the LCRA that were all up for reappointment. And so it was just that time of year to get them all reappointed. So that's why we put them on this resolution tonight. Does anybody else that'd like to speak to it, or anybody has any questions or concerns?
I would echo my thoughts about both of these people. Chuck Fugate has served in various capacities throughout the community in the city of Ozark, and so is Cricket Giles. Both of them are a joy to work with.
Absolutely.
Your Honor, oh, sorry, the discussion's over.
I believe so.
All right, Your Honor, I move that we adopt resolution 1982.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Gardner to adopt resolution 1982. All those in favor? Unanimous. Moving on to second reading and final passage of bills. Mr. Galloway.
Your Honor, I move that we place bill number 3436 on its second reading by title only.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Gardner to place bill 3436 on its second reading by title only. All those in favor?
An ordinance amending the corporate boundaries of the City of Ozark, Missouri by annexing certain real property generally known as a parcel approximately 0.48 acres at 1801 South 11th Avenue.
Mr. Smith. Anything to add to this? Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I move that we enact bill number 3436 as ordinance number 23-025.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Gardner to adopt bill 3436 as ordinance 23-025. Can I get a roll call, please?
Alderman Galloway.
Aye.
Alderman Snyder.
Aye.
Alderman Alder.
Aye.
Alderman Vaughn.
Aye.
Alderman Gardner.
Aye.
Alderman Campbell.
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
Mr. Galloway.
Your Honor, I move that we place bill number 3437 on its second reading by title only.
Hard to get a second tonight. Yeah. Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Gardner to place bill 3437 on its second reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance amending the zoning code and official map by changing the zoning classification of certain property located at 1801 South 11th Avenue.
Any questions or comments from the board on this bill? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I move that we enact bill number 3437 as ordinance number 23-026.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Gardner to adopt Bill 3437 as ordinance 23-026. Can I get a roll call?
Alderman Campbell.
Aye.
Alderman Vaughn.
Aye.
Alderman Galloway. Alderman Alder.
Aye.
Alderman Gardner.
Aye.
Alderman Snyder.
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
Mr. Snyder.
Your Honor, I move to place bill number 3439 in second reading and title.
Second. Sorry.
Motion was made by Alderman Snyder, seconded by Alderman Vaughn to place Bill 3439 on its first reading by title and description. All those in favor?
An ordinance authorizing the city to enter into a contract with Masters Plumbing LLC for services related to the installation of hot water heaters at the Ozark Community Center.
Any further questions or comments from the board on this? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I move that we enact bill number 34, ordinance number 23-027.
Second.
Seconds are hard to come by tonight.
Motion was made by Alderman Snyder, seconded by Alderman Galloway to adopt Bill 3439 as ordinance 23-027. Can I get a roll call, please? Roll call.
Alderman Snyder.
Aye.
Alderman Gardner.
Aye.
Alderman Alder.
Aye.
Alderman Galloway.
Aye.
Alderman Campbell.
Aye.
Alderman Vaughn.
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
Mr. Galloway.
Your Honor, I move that we place bill number 3324 on its second reading by title only.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Snyder to place Bill 3324 on its second reading by title only. All those in favor?
An ordinance amending the municipal code of the city of Ozark, Missouri, chapter 405 relating to zoning regulations.
Any questions or comments on the floor?
Cameron, can I ask you?
Sir.
I was just curious, on dwelling, single family, it said, the Division of Family Services or Department of Mental Health to provide foster care to 1, not more than 7. So, you can't have more than 7 foster families. That's on page 5.
Yes, halfway down, that is our current definition in the.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay. And then. I'm sorry. I just thought this was interesting. It says, on page 20. Agriculture use, it says, are you there yet? Yeah, feeding, breeding, or milking operations are contained in enclosed buildings.
Yes, and again, this is an ordinance that's been in place quite some time. The only reason it's in here is just because we're addressing the revisions that are related to the single family. We're not proposing any of this yet.
Yeah. Okay, does that mean if you have cows, you have to feed them inside?
That's correct.
In the city.
In the city. But then it says on the next line as well as grazing and pasturing of animals.
Good.
So you can't.
Yeah, control feed like feeding versus natural grazing.
Okay. Okay. I just thought that was-
In close feeding is more geared for a type of operation. They raise.
Okay. And- And then on page 23. It says the property owner must occupy either the primary dwelling unit or accessory dwelling unit.
That's correct.
So they could have a house there and have an accessory dwelling unit, live in an accessory dwelling unit,
Yes, the property owner has to live in one of the.
one of the others.
And that's in addition, what I'm going to present to you tonight is our initial use requirements, but yes, that is how we introduce define the occupants of accessory building.
Okay, and that's just the. The owner has to be present.
Yes, the owner has to want to be at those.
Okay, thank you very much.
Alderman Gardner. Mr. Gardner.
Yes, as I remember, this was on its first reading last time, and you were going to bring back some guidelines for the conditional use permit, and I think that's where I would like to start. They were in this that you passed out, and I've got some questions about it, but before I get my questions, we probably ought to discuss.
Yeah, I would like to run through those.
Yeah.
All right, I laid in front of you this evening the proposed condition that the staff is proposing to place on the accessory dwelling unit. Staff has been working on doing an amendment to ordinance section 405-510 conditional use permits. The first 4 or 5 pages are what's already in that ordinance. So you kind of skip through those pages and then just focus starting on page 6. 6, and then we're after number 6 on page 6, I, conditional use permits for accessory dwelling units. So based on the past, the meeting, it was asked if staff to kind of propose or come up with conditions that we would be placing on these. Just reading through the purpose of these restrictions. 1 is to minimize any potential adverse effects of the accessory dwelling units could have on neighboring properties while providing additional housing choices. And then 2, provide careful design, placement, and complementing use of the property and adjacent properties. So that was kind of the purpose that we're proposing in this revision. And then following that in item 2 are the proposed conditions that we're placing. Additional requirements. In addition to the provisions and restrictions listed above for a conditional use permit, the following shall be required for a conditional use permit for an accessory dwelling unit. Item A, accessory dwelling units shall conform to the building setbacks on a lot and shall be a minimum of 25 feet from the front corner of the structure. B, an existing accessory structure converted to an accessory dwelling unit shall be exempt from the setback requirements, but shall comply with the adopted International Residential Code. C, accessory dwelling units shall not exceed the maximum height of the principal structure based on the highest point of its roof compared to the lowest point of the ground of the primary residence. D, accessory dwelling units shall not exceed 50% of the living area of the principal dwelling or 1,000 square feet, whichever is less. The accessory dwelling unit shall count toward the total number of coverage for allowed accessory structures. We'll clarify there, the ordinance already for just accessory structures, you can have up to 3 on one lot. So this would count as one of those 3 as an accessory dwelling. E, accessory dwelling units shall match the exterior materials. F, construction of accessory dwelling units shall be in accordance with the adopted International Residential Building Codes. D, the property owner must occupy either the primary dwelling unit or accessory dwelling unit. H, in addition to the primary dwelling unit parking, a minimum of 1 on-site parking space shall be provided for an accessory dwelling unit. I, the property owner is required to notify an existing homeowners association, if applicable, within the conditional use public notices. And then J, rental accessory dwelling units. If an accessory dwelling unit is to be rented, the property owner shall apply and obtain a business registration annually. Prior to the issuance of a business registration, an accessory dwelling unit shall be inspected annually by the city and shall be required to provide a successful inspection before a business registration may be issued. If a non-rented accessory dwelling unit ceases to be used and converted to a rental accessory dwelling unit, then it shall be required to obtain that same requirement. So what that is clarifying is if they use it for their own family, then they're not required to establish a business registration because it's not a rented accessory dwelling. And then J, the conditional use permit shall be nullified if any state, federal, local laws have not been complied with and have been violated. So again, those are kind of the conditions that staff has worked up to propose to you all. Be happy to add anything, address any feedback. Staff is hoping to take this ordinance revision to the Planning and Zoning Commission at our meeting in April, so that we can keep moving that through to get back for you guys for full action.
Can I continue? Yes, sir. Excuse me. My concern last time was that if we were going to do this, we needed to have some guidelines, which you provided. And I agree with 100% of these. These are things that we should do if we're going to allow an accessory dwelling unit. But my concern at the time was that even if there were conditional, even if there were guidelines that were 100% met, that this could lead to additional dwelling units on a lot that previously only had one dwelling unit. And that could change the landscape of that lot from a single family lot to a multi-family lot. Because it only requires the family member to live in one of the two units. And so it kind of, I don't know how many, there probably aren't enough lots in this town that I can count on one hand that would qualify for this. But it seems to me like it could lead to a situation where if somebody could meet all of these guidelines, they could put a secondary a dwelling unit on their house and just make an Airbnb in their own backyard or wherever. And that, I think, it ruins the idea of having a single family neighborhood. And so, but on the other hand, I really feel that there have been times when something like that was necessary. And what I say by that is not for business, but if there is and we talked about this last time, if there is a need within a family to provide care for a family member, and there's not room in the original structure to do so. It may be the failing health of a grandparent. It could be a lot of things. But we have seen that before, and the county has already addressed it, at least when they went through planning and zoning in the early days. I don't know if it's still there or not. But they would only allow that if there was a need, a specific need that had to be proven, that we have to bring grandma home because she's too sick. We need to take care of her close by, or we can't afford other care, or whatever the reason, they would have to prove that. And being a conditional use permit, it would have to be renewed. So I think we just need to put steps in here, put something in here to avoid Airbnb accessory dwelling units popping up. Even though there might not be many places to do it, it still leaves it open. And that's what I don't like about it. So I think there needs to be a determination of need that is non-business related, and that in order to renew the conditional use permit, it has to be checked annually that need is still the case and it's being used for that need. And that's what I would really like to see going forward. I certainly don't know how everybody else feels, but we just need to put steps in there to protect the single family neighborhoods from what could happen. Thank you.
I would just like to reiterate Alderman Gardner's comments, and I think what I took from our last meeting was that, everyone felt compelled to allow these conditional permits in the situations where there, I could best say, was a condition, the grandma housing, that said, I think everybody expressed the same concern, which was we don't want to see these turned into rental properties at the end of the day, which essentially makes them non-single family dwellings. I appreciate that a lot of work was put into this, but when I read this and it says, well, they can rent it now, I'm sorry, I'm not okay with that. So.
Yeah, I think that Alderman Alder had very much reinforced the idea, which is something I've mentioned too, the importance of having an opportunity for a family to move in the case of a family crisis. I think I had also been clear too for my ward and Ward 2, where this would be a law like this. Would be particularly useful for landowners there as proximity to the river and to the commercial development that's out there. Our Airbnbs already exist in Ward 2. Airbnbs exist in accessory buildings in Ward 2. They're already here. What they are not is regulated. They are not regulated at all. They are not held to the same standard as a basic hotel. We do not have a listing of who has them. We don't know, we can't enter them to inspect them. We do not have a regulatory framework at all for them. The market demands that they be had. And they're going to be more, but we as a city are not equipped to deal with it. We can't even ban them because we can't get in there because we can't prove that they exist, but I know they exist. One thing that I would ask to consider, and I do appreciate the criticism of we're talking about paragraph J, is that it solves a problem that presently exists. The properties that have accessory dwelling units aren't that many. But they are not subject to inspection and they are being leased. And I would like them to be held to a higher standard. And so I think that's a reason to support it. But as to the argument, which I appreciate, that it could change potentially the character of the neighborhood. I'm not sure that I weigh that argument as others do. I do understand the argument, but the whole point of the conditional use permit is that you have to apply for it, provide public notice, and if people object to it, they can come. And I would expect that would exactly happen in a neighborhood that did not want to have this kind of a rental unit in it. So I think that it is built into the conditional use process, the concern that I heard mentioned, and I do respect that concern. So I asked to consider that.
Mr. Carter. Just to follow up what Mr. Galloway said. I agree with that, but I know it can come to planning and zoning, but without enough guidelines in here, it can only be discussed, and there would be no basis for turning it down if we didn't have guidelines that said this was not proper. So that's why I'm just thinking that the guideline will be beefed up.
Just a question on that, and Mr. Alderman Galloway, I don't know, this may go to, could, even if we establish this now, and to your point, the ones that are already existing in Ward 2, can this be retroactively applied to those if they don't already have conditional use permits anyway?
They would need to come into compliance would be my understanding.
So that's a yes.
Yes, they would need to come into compliance and obtain a conditional use permit to operate.
Could we refuse a conditional use permit, one that was already in? Because I don't think that's right.
The city of Ozark doesn't presently have an ordinance allowing or not allowing an Airbnb. And so staff has prepared an ordinance at that time that the board would want to consider one to allow Airbnb under certain regulations that present similar laws for inspections and business registrations. This ordinance also allows those just for the rental of an accessory dwelling unit. So any business that's being run where you're renting an accessory dwelling unit would have to come into compliance.
I would like to add to that. I would keep that in mind about back to prove that there's a need. If we permit one to be allowed as there's a need, when that need goes away, do they have to tear it down? They've invested all that. Seems like they should have the opportunity to be fair. They could reutilize that. It doesn't. So I can keep that in mind too.
I don't know. I'm not next, but I'm working to mind that.
I think though, it is a fair point to say that, especially for my concern that we have some criteria that we can say, well, look, if this is an accessory dwelling unit and it's an Airbnb and that's your proposal, that means 3 fire hydrants that were, fire hydrants, 3 fire extinguishers. That means other things that might be over and above residential concern. mean, if you think about what we require for a hotel, it might mean security, it might mean that kind of thing. Maybe, I mean, if we enact this, is there anything to prevent the city from coming back to have regulations that are specific to Airbnb rentals?
I wouldn't think so. I think we'd either add to this or clarify an Airbnb specifically, or if there is an opportunity that we see there is some kind of conflict, we would address it.
Well, my feeling is I would like to have a foot in the door in getting this looked at. This is coming, it's already here in my ward, it will be more. But it would seem to me that we'd look at this paragraph J as a beginning point, not an end point, as far as regulating the overnight rentals. That would be my suggestion.
I believe Ms. Alder.
A couple of thoughts. I think we should encourage Airbnbs. I mean, they're common. That's the way people like to visit places. We want tourism. The mill, we're going to have more people wanting to come into the area. I know my daughter and her husband, they always do Airbnbs when they travel. They never do hotels. So I think that we need to look at this as a viable business opportunity for Ozark and bring about regulations that make sense and make it so people can do them. So I definitely think we shouldn't discourage Airbnbs. And the other thing, the concern that I have talking about showing a need, I think that gets foggy because who's going to decide if the need is accurate? Or, I mean, what do you have? Do you have the grandmother and grandfather? That's pretty easy. But what about the pregnant girl that's single that wants to finish college, so her parents went to build her a little place to raise the child? Is that a need? Probably. Well, what about, I mean, we can go on, and then who decides on all these needs? So I don't see that being easy. I think you're getting into the worms on that one.
I believe Mr. Snyder was next.
2 questions. Will there be an alternate address associated with it?
Yeah, it would be the same address.
So if we get a call for service at that address and someone's living in the back, it would be an A or a B, because what if the domestic occurs in the back?
Generally, that's what E911 will assign, they'll do an A and B. But I would imagine they'd keep it same. I say no, there would be a separate because I'm just anticipating that's what E911 will assign, as that's how they assign the property. Actually, 2 buildings on that property unless it's in the commercial. And that's where they'll do an A and B. So they might potentially do that 403A, 403B, depending on how that's where it's something we definitely can inquire and request if that's the desire.
Okay, the other question I have, or just a concern more than anything, tiny homes. Springfield is inundated with tiny homes right now. And I think if we open up this Pandora's box, we're not going to be able to close it. So I do believe we need to reassess this.
The city of Ozark has not adopted the tiny home ordinance, the building code, and that's why we specifically put in here for the international residential building code. So all the minimum burden sizes have to be compliant to the building code. We have not adopted.
Mr. Gardner. My thought is that if we anticipate regulating what's commonly called an Airbnb and not long-term rentals, I mean apartments, I mean just a regular rental house, that's discrimination. We bantered around several times whether or not we have a rental inspection code where we're just opening ourselves up to a can of worms, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but we need to go into it with our eyes open. And right now we're only talking about Airbnb, but I don't think you can regulate that unless you regulate long term. I mean, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander.
You're correct, we don't regulate all rentals, but this wouldn't be, in this ordinance, it doesn't matter if it's a long-term rental or Airbnb. If it's accessory dwelling unit, right now. It's rented.
Mr. Vaughn.
More of a statement than a question, then I'll close, but or yield, but I just very black and white, I guess, to me, and it's if we call something single family residential, I don't understand how we can pass something that we know is not going to be single family, or at least has the potential to not be single family residential. When I move somewhere, when I move my family somewhere, when I move to an area, I don't expect to live next door to an Airbnb. And I'll stop there.
Amanda or Mrs. Callaway?
Yeah.
On this right here, the way we put this onto its second reading originally
Mhm.
was by putting a hold on this conditional use.
That's correct. That language has been incorporated both in a whereas clause explaining what happened at that meeting and also on the last page in section 18. If this ordinance is passed tonight, then a conditional, an accessory dwelling unit conditional use permit shall not be issued until the Board of Aldermen adopts criteria for those to be issued. So until you adopt an ordinance or a form of an ordinance that has been discussed, those will not be issued.
Sure. I don't think we're ready then to vote on this. If we're gonna adopt it as is, because I think it needs to be amended for some sort of determination of need of the accessory. And possibly even check annually,
Just a
because.
I'm sorry, a point of clarification, the conditional use handout that you have that was not part of your packet is not being voted on tonight. That was required and requested by the motion made by Alderman Galloway. The criteria tonight so that you had it in front of you as you contemplated passing the ordinance that amends the single family law that includes the accessory dwelling units.
So what happens if we vote and approve this tonight
Mhm.
and we have not dealt with the conditional use guidelines?
No accessory dwelling unit permit will be issued until the Board of Aldermen does approve guidelines. So that, those guidelines would have to go to planning and zoning and then come back before the Board of Aldermen. And then once they're passed by the Board of Aldermen and adopted into the code, at that time, that conditional hold on the issuance of those permits would be released and then they would be allowed.
So we're kicking it down the road and saying we're identifying what a conditional use or what a accessory dwelling unit is, but saying you can't do it now.
I think it's allowing the amendment to move forward, understanding that there's concerns so that staff and the Board of Aldermen can work through those concerns and adopt an appropriate law.
But as I understand it, it essentially allows them, it just doesn't say how.
They won't be allowed until the Board of Aldermen address criteria, and that's in the ordinance language. So that's why it's in both the whereas clause and in a section. So the section states that none will be issued until that time that you approve the conditional use permit.
Okay. I think we're putting the cart before the horse. That's great.
Mr. Vaughn.
I was just gonna again reiterate Alderman Gardner's comments. I feel like this is something that we're asking half of a board to do now and half of a new board to do, or more than half of a new board to do later on. So I don't.
Gardner. I'm sorry to drag this on and this may sound contentious and I don't really want it to be, but I don't think we're ready to vote on this. Not only for the reasons that I brought up, but especially for the one that I brought up last meeting and overlooked tonight. And that's the fact that this board is going to have a totally different face in a week. There will be at least 3 new people voting on the Board of Aldermen. So I move that we table this indefinitely. With the thought that we work and I don't know how to do this, Ms. Callaway, so but I don't think we're ready to vote on that. I think planning and zoning commission needs to discuss it, but I think it needs to be dealt with down the road. But I think with a full board here, that's not the board that's here tonight. And so I
I don't know if indefinitely is the right word, but I want to vote to table that. If it doesn't pass, that's okay. I'll live with that. But I want to vote to table it indefinitely until planning and zoning and planning and development can come up with a complete set of guidelines to present all at the same time. I would entertain a second.
So. Okay,
And I would
So-
like to speak against that.
it's the point of order on that. It's just after we take, if someone wants to speak against it, so we still go to the vote.
I have no objection.
If you made a motion in a second, just want some clarification.
If there was an interest in speaking to the motion, any alderman can speak to the motion that's on the table.
Mr. Galloway.
Yeah, I don't think that we should table it. There's 2 points to be made. One, in my comments to Cameron, I didn't think that I was saying that I would reject these. I think I agreed with what I heard Alderman Gardner say at the beginning, is I've 100% approved these. I was just saying I wanted to get my foot in the door. But I'd like to start with having these things subject to regulation. I also would like to see people brought into a law-abiding situation with their accessory dwelling units. And I also believe that there is a need in my ward in particular for use this way. I also don't believe that tabling accomplishes what Alderman Gardner sets out. First, I don't think we have to change this, but even if we do, we're just kicking the can down the road your way or my way. But at least with my way, we've got a framework by which to move forward. If somebody disagrees with me and says, well, I'd like to tinker with some of the guidelines on conditional use down the road, they can, but at least we have progressed in this direction. And I think that the city deserves for us, after 3 years on this particular issue, that we at least begin that movement in this direction. So I don't think it's kicking the can down the road. I think it's getting it to a resolution.
I think the fifth whereas of bill number 3324 really takes care of the issue. I agree with Alderman Galloway that we should go ahead and pass this. We talked about it last week, or I'm sorry, last meeting. We talked about what our intent was. And our intent at that time was to do exactly what Mr. Smith had done. So I'm basically just leaning on the fifth whereas on the front page of the bill. And I think that puts me in agreement with Alderman Galloway.
Well, and one thing I want to be clear on tonight, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Galloway, but we are not even able to vote on this accessory dwelling unit tonight.
You're not voting on the handout that is just contemplated criteria for a conditional use. You're only voting if it moves forward on the bill number 3324 that anticipates amendments to chapter 405 relating to single family zoning that just happens to incorporate accessory dwelling units.
So what we're deciding tonight is SF1 and SF2. Do we want to redo our zoning ordinance from where they are now to that? We do have the language in there of the accessory dwelling unit. We know that needs to be worked through, whether that means we strike it from it, or whether that means that we come up with better language as time goes on to make sure that we feel comfortable with it before we start issuing these permits, or if we ever do that. So want to make sure we don't get too focused on this accessory dwelling, because that's not actually what we're deciding on tonight. We're deciding on the SF1 and SF2. And I know that we've all worked on that for a long time, and that's the reason why I don't want us to get sidetracked by this and this accessory dwelling unit and stop the entire ordinance from going forward. That would just be my take on it. I'm not sure which one of you were next, Mr. Gardner.
I don't disagree.
Okay, that fifth whereas would probably take care of it. However, and I don't know if this is worth tabling it for or not, we are asking the next Board of Aldermen to become as well acquainted with what we would pass tonight as we are in order, when they consider the conditions or the guidelines for the conditional use permit. And I don't know if that's too much to ask a new Board of Aldermen or not, but they should certainly become aware of what we've discussed when they vote on the guidelines for the new conditional use permit. So that would be a question. I'm not going to remove my motion to table it because it's been seconded. But I would temper that with the fact that ordinance or the fifth whereas would probably take care of it. But do we want to put on the next Board of Aldermen, which could be three holding faces, may not be, the obligation to become as up to speed as you would say with where we are right now when they vote on it. So that's to me, that's the question now.
Again, just reiterate Alderman Gardner's concerns and the fact that the next Board of Aldermen is under no obligation to accept any conditional use restrictions. If this passes as is, and we have stated, we strongly feel like there should be conditional uses. So I'm sorry, I agree with Alderman Gardner, and I don't, yeah.
Any other comments? Or-
I want to do
Yeah.
one. I don't see where tabling this tonight would put would put more, I'm gonna call it work, would put more work on the future alderman to catch up on the bill. And it's hard to divide, it's hard to separate the two bills. Number one, I think kind of just the opposite. I think that we have talked through this thing and we talked 2 weeks ago about how we would want to handle it. And I think the fact that if we do pass this tonight, that actually makes it less for the next board to catch up on. I think at that point, they'll need to catch up on this. At a minimum, if we do table this tonight, they're definitely going to have to catch up on both of them. So I don't know that tabling it tonight takes any work off the next board, because they're going to have to educate themselves on both.
Oh, question.
That's your motion, is it?
Yes. And then second.
All those in favor? Is that what you're asking for?
Mhm.
All those in favor? I guess I need to rehash that. So the motion was made by,
I made a motion to table the second reading of Bill 3324 and it was second. So we need, that's what I'm going to question. I'm not vote on the table.
motion was made by Alderman Gardner, seconded by Alderman Snyder to table Bill 3324 indefinitely.
So such time as planning and zoning, planning and development can bring a complete agreed upon to us.
I can just table indefinitely then, or do I need to put those stipulations in there?
It's however, Mr. Alderman Gardner wants to word the motion.
Well, I take it no longer necessary for them to do their work. So what's the proper way of that?
The original motion was to table this bill indefinitely, and it received a second. So I would move forward with the original language.
We brought back to city and that work is done.
I'm going to restate that then. The motion was made by Alderman Gardner, seconded by Alderman Snyder to table Bill 3324 indefinitely. Can I get a roll call?
Alderman Gardner,
Aye.
Alderman Vaughn.
Aye.
Alderman Campbell,
Now,
Alderman Snyder,
Uh,
Alderman Alder,
None. Nay.
Alderman Galloway. Well, we have 3 aye and 3 nay. We have a tie.
Nay.
Mayor breaks the tie. Nay, motion fails.
Questions to the original ordinance.
Say that again.
I said we bring the ordinance to a vote.
Okay.
I move that we adopt bill number 3324 as ordinance number 23-0258.
23028.
I did have it right. Thanks.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Campbell to 3324 as ordinance 23-028. Can I get a roll call, please?
Alderman Vaughn.
Nay.
Alderman Alder. Alderman Campbell.
Aye.
Alderman Galloway.
Aye.
Alderman Gardner.
Aye.
Alderman Snyder.
Nay.
We have 4 aye votes, 2 nay, motion carries.
Okay, we come out to reports of officers, boards, and committees. Mr. Childers.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I think I mentioned before that this year I am currently serving as the president of the Ozark Transportation Organization. That organization is the regional metropolitan planning organization for transportation. We are responsible for going through the planning process to set the transportation improvement program for the region. And that is a big region. It's Springfield and Ozark, Nixa, all the way around the whole MSA. We recently traveled again to Jefferson City, where we had a transportation lobby day. And we met with numerous senators and representatives. This is very important because we are working very hard to try to get I-44 improved, the entire 5 miles and all the interchanges all the way through I-44. We have about a $20 million in environmental, as well as the $28 million request to get that done so that we can get the other funds through a grant through the federal government of over $100 million, because that's what it really costs. So basically, we had a really good day and had a lot of good conversations. There is a tremendous amount of discussion going on right now about the budget. And the Senate and the House are not seeing exactly the same picture of what that budget looks like. And a lot of dollars and a lot of discussion about transportation. But I will say, Southwest Missouri went up. We represented very well. I feel very good about it. And I just wanted to let everybody know that it was a successful trip with our regional friends to Jeff City. Anybody got any questions on that?
Yeah, I do.
I'm sorry, I got a frog in my throat here.
I don't know if this directly ties into the meeting you had, but it's something that we talked about, gosh, a decade ago. And that's the fact that MoDOT will not give us a sign on Highway 65 that says Ozark that way, because we have because we have 3 or more interchanges. Okay, they will give us a sign that says, get off here, go to Alexa. Get off here, you go to Florida. Get off here, you go to Fremont Hill, blah, blah, blah. But they will not allow us to have a sign that says you get off here to go to Ozark. So with that being said, with the Interstate 44 work that's going on that you were discussing, can we get a sign on I-44 that says Ozark that way? I know they can't get one that says Springfield because they have too many interchanges.
Yeah. Well, I don't know the answer to that. You're getting a little ahead of me on that. If we get the money, we'll talk about it. However, I don't know that it has to do, the MoDOT rules, I don't believe has to deal with the number of interchanges that you have. The way that they dictate that, at least my understanding of how they put up signage, is that when you get off at an interchange, you're going to get a directional sign to the next city in whatever direction you're getting off there. So really what you're asking for is really more of a, what we would call a sign and a study that Mr. Parsons and I are working on right now, which is an aesthetic study of our entire 3 interchanges down Highway 65, which may enable us to say, you're in Ozark on those interchanges. But as far as MoDOT's concerned, they're going to tell you a direction is that's Nixa, that's Sparta, that's Forsyth, and they're going to take you to the next destination. Now, I don't know all their rules.
Okay.
We can pull all those up, and I'm happy to find out what that is and provide them to you. It's my understanding that that's what they're doing. You get off and they direct you to the town that is a certain amount of miles to one way or the other.
Okay. Can I follow up on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can we get Ozark up? I'm sorry. Can we raise the question to MoDOT of if I'm traveling west on Highway 60 from Rogersville to Glenstone Avenue?
Yeah.
Or Republic Road, whatever that exit's called. If they are going to say, you get off here, the next town down is, it says Branson. They skipped Ozark.
Right.
So forget the part about how many interchanges it takes and stuff like that. Now what I want, I'm changing my story. Now what I want to do is, instead of them saying the next town south is Branson, in my mind, they should say the next town south is Ozark.
Yeah, I don't think we're the only one who's asked this question over the decades that they've had their sign regulations, and MoDOT has, rules that they follow, and that's just the rules. There's nothing wrong with asking for anything. We can ask for any sign. I just know that we've asked those questions before, and other cities have. They say these are the rules and this is how we do it. And we don't want any more signs to have to take care of on the right of way. And we're trying to minimize our maintenance costs over, and I'm not arguing for it. I mean, put Ozark everywhere, that'd be great. But yeah,
if we have signage too.
I think we can ask for anything, and I think that we can just see what they say based on the rules that is statewide, and that's how they do it. So, but yeah, we can always inquire. I'm happy to do that. We're happy to do that. We can see what options we have. You bet. Yeah. I got a couple more things,
Yes, sir.
if I may. Also wanted to let everybody know that through working with through all this legislative efforts, we're working with Show Me Christian County, our economic development organization that are our partners across the street, and have been to Jeff City with them as well to talk about economic development. They have started to put together a regularly scheduled meeting that we can have with our local representatives and senators. Now, that doesn't mean everybody will show up, but at least we're trying very hard to make sure that we have an opportunity to see them face to face. They're giving us that opportunity to be able to talk to the local communities. And I think just creating that forum is really good. So the cities are meeting with them and as well as the county to discuss, bills that are of concern to us that may have a detrimental impact on our communities, or maybe a positive impact if we're in support of something. So I just wanted you to know that we're working hard in those legislative matters, and Show Me Christian County has helped us set all those up. Last but not least, I want to introduce everybody to Miss Jennifer Abreu, who is our new communications manager. She is sitting right next to Samantha over there. Jennifer, this is the board of aldermen and the mayor and the public at large. And so Jennifer comes to us. She started last week on Monday, and she's been meeting with as many people as she can in as many departments, and she's catching up. So if you get to say hi to Jennifer. our new communications manager. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Go.
We had comments.
We're moving on to comments. Yep. Moving on to miscellaneous comments and now announcements for the board of all.
I just wanted to say a couple of remarks. I know that next meeting, some of us, or one of us, will not be here, and I want to just say that I have a saying that I am never at my best as when someone talks me out of a bad decision or a bad position. And everybody who has sat on this board has had the honor of putting me at my best. And I enjoy serving with everybody here. Rick, I know, will be leaving. And I wanted to say a couple remarks about that. Rick has.
I don't mean he, I mean, you.
Rick has served in the city council well before me and served as a mayor while I was on city council, and then I've seen him act as a board of aldermen. I can say he represents the best of us. His commitment to the community, and I can say that about the previous mayors before him as well. His commitment to the community is very well known. He has made himself always involved in this community. He earned his spot as being mayor by serving on all those thankless commissions that exist. I know with him as mayor and as alderman, but particularly as mayor, if I got a phone call from him, if he said, Bruce, we need to do the right thing, that would always make my gut kind of clench up, because he's going to make me decide to do something unpopular. A very thoughtful person who also is demonstrated that he's at his best when he is talked out of a position, as he listens to both sides. It's been a pleasure serving with you and mayor and as alderman, and thank you for your service to this community.
Thank you.
I'm going to echo that. I have a lot of respect for you, Mr. Gardner, and you're, I don't know, you've always been an inspiration to me, and you're a lot of the reason why I'm here. And I'm really going to be sad to see you go. I understand.
I'll be here for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just add my story too. When the tornado went through when Grand Haven, because we were okay.
Waterford.
Yeah, oh, it's terrible. The first call I got to see if I was okay was Rick, and that I was really impressed. He just wanted to know if I was okay. And the other thing that stuck with me and I appreciate very much is Rick and Pam. When COVID hit and a lot of businesses closed, I got to stay open because I had enough cheese that I was considered grocery. So, but Rick and Pam came up and they said, what can we do to help? Can we do something for you? Can we make baskets? We'll sell baskets. And I just really appreciate that. We didn't have to do that. And yeah, you were the only one that showed up to want to make. So, thank you, and I hope you stay in the community, stay very active. Give us advice.
Couldn't drag me out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's my turn. I want to, I had planned to say this before Bruce started his tirade. But I want to tell you a story about our 3-month alderman Shane Vaughn. Okay, this is his last meeting too. He was appointed to fill RJ's seat, when RJ was promoted from mayor pro tem to mayor, when Brad Jackson left. So he created a natural, 3-month appointment for a job that he couldn't apply for because the deadline was passed to run for it. So he, agreed to stand in for 3 months. And, Mr. Vaughn and I have disagreed in the past on a lot of things. We've been friends for a very long time, and there are many more things that we agree on and are friends. Okay, but there were a couple of issues that we really disagreed on, and that you saw it tonight, and that's okay. And RJ came to me and said, that, I need to fill that spot. It's just not fair to have Ward 1 empty for 3 months. And he's absolutely right. It shouldn't have been. And he said, I'm thinking of Shane Vaughn. Oh my gosh. Only because now you have to make a decision. I'm not going to tell us, it takes too long. And I went, well, that's an interesting thought. And then I got to thinking more about it. And what that accomplished is it got this man who was very bright and has a very responsible job in life outside of these chambers. It got him involved in our city, and I told him that I hope he stays involved. I don't know how, because you can't run for anything for another year, but you're a good man, Shane Vaughn, and everything that I've said to RJ, just in questioning that, I ended up agreeing with it, but I take it all back. Okay. You know what I'm talking about. These people are but I just really applaud you. You were prepared, you're thoughtful, you ask good questions. You need to stick around, pal. Thank you.
I have to retort. I just want to say thank you and Alderman Gardner to all the service that you've put forth to Ozark. This has certainly opened my eyes, and I'm going to start saying names. I hope I don't miss anybody, but to all the candidates that we have sitting out in the audience tonight, I wish there were more of you. I wish there were more of you that were involved. And that would be my message to everybody is just encourage everybody, everyone to get involved and to come to meetings, even if you're not candidates, but to come and listen. I thought through Commissioner Jackson, that I knew a lot about what happened here and I didn't. But I'm glad I've had this opportunity. And so just encourage everybody to get involved and stay involved. So thank you.
Mr. Campbell.
Well, that's some pretty good stories. I thought I was going to get some wine with the cheese there. But anyway, with that being said, I'm glad we had a pretty good crowd here tonight, because I think with that bill number 3324 and all the discussion that went on with it and the tie vote that we had and just the way everybody handled themselves, and I'm just glad there were so many people here to see it. And it wasn't one of those nights when there was just like 2 people out there and one of them was a police officer, or something like that. So I'm glad we had a lot of people here tonight to see that.
One thing I would say is, we do know we're going to see some change on the board and get a new mayor. And one thing I think has always been a strength since I've been involved with the city with capacities and Alderman and stuff is that we have a pretty eclectic board. We all have different backgrounds, we all have different point of views, and a lot of these types of bills, like the bill 3324, it does take us a long time to come to conclusions, but we're addressing a lot of really good points and a lot of really good things. And I think good legislation always takes time, and it always takes being thought through, and to try to identify any byproducts or consequences from that are unseen or maybe not on the surface. And I think it's important to always have that going forward as a new board of aldermen and new mayor step in, is that we all learn to understand each other and how to work together and how to take the differences between us and use them as strengths, not as weaknesses. And I think we've done a pretty good job with that. So that would be my closing statement. So any other questions or comments from the board?
Go vote.
Go vote.
Move to adjourn.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Vaughn and Alder to bring this